So DeVaris, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
DeVaris Brown is the CEO and co-founder of Meroxa, which enables teams of any size and any level of expertise to build real-time data pipelines in minutes, not months. And prior to founding Meroxa, DeVaris was a product leader at Twitter, Heroku, and Zendesk. So welcome, excited to have you at this event. So just to jump right into it, what does the tooling landscape look like today in the world of data pipelines, and where do you see the gaps that led you to the creation of Meroxa?
Yeah, good question. So the tooling landscape looks like a bunch of point solutions that run in batch and not in real time. Essentially, you have the customer data platforms on one side where I have to define a rigid schema up front. And then if any of those, kind of upstream schema changes, like all my downstream dependencies break, everybody has that graph where they're looking at it and it's like, yo, there's, the dip. And you're like, yeah, we had data quality issues. We didn't use great expectations, our bad. And so now you basically are like, well, what do you do then? And so Meroxa, we wanted to kind of combat against that. And we kept seeing that, customers or end users at the end of the day wanted this highly contextualized, relevant experience that can only be provided by real-time data. But all of the tools and the commercial offerings in open source space had very, very rigid, confusing operating paradigms and configuration profiles. And so what we decided was, me and my co-founder Ali at Meroxa, that we should go do something about that. We were both spending our time over at Heroku, building the world's best platform as a service. Without a doubt, people can argue that, but everybody has probably built something on Heroku at one point in time if you're an engineer. And we just, continuously heard hey, where's the Heroku for data and where's the Heroku for real-time data? So it's more than just a managed service. It's really this breadth offering around data ingestion, schema management, event streaming, and then kind of multiplexing that we really wanted to solve from a breadth platform solution, because at some point real-time data has to be the default, right? You don't necessarily have to add, action off of the real-time data, but you still get that granularity to understand hey, what happened in this moment? What was all the context around this event? And you really only get that from having a real-time data source. And so that's really what we saw in the market as far as gaps, right? 99.99% of the commercial offerings are focused on analytics, right? Just get everything down to the data warehouse. More people know SQL, they'll figure it out, right? So, kudos to Snowflake and dbt. But at the same time, it's just kind of if I have all these different data sources, the operational overhead, the cognitive overhead that I have to reason about all of these different data models and schemas and to write these gnarly aggregations, it's well, why don't you just move the responsibility up a little further? You can actually transform these events in real time. And then so that by the time it reaches your downstream dependencies, it's already in a format that you can consume and use in multiple different ways. And so that's really kind of, what the opportunities presented us. And we just kind of built a platform for it. We really want to make real-time data the default.
Great. And to make this approachable by everyone, so in its simplest way, so Meroxa helps companies take data from a bunch of different sources. So that could be your Salesforce, your Zendesk, SaaS tools, and move it downstream in the data pipeline that could be a data warehouse, that could be different sources, different repositories, and do that in real time. Is that a fair description at the most basic?
Yeah. But I would say we don't necessarily do the SaaS tools right now, but we take it from your
database,
operational database. Yeah.
Okay.
And you just point us at that. There's no schema definition up front, and we figure out how to get data out of that in real time, and then give you the ability to pour that data out into a myriad of destinations.
Great. And for folks that may be familiar with the concept of ETL or the newer expression, which is ELT, And we had George from Fivetran at an event, one of his events a few months ago. Like, help us understand how this is different or comparable.
Yeah. So specifically with some of the ETL vendors, right? It's a job that you run on a schedule. Like at this time, every 5 minutes, I'm just going to take data from one place to the next, right? And that's basically the ELT thing. I'm going to take it from my, these data sources and put it into my data warehouse on a schedule, right? And it makes sense for people that don't necessarily need to have kind of that granular data, right? Like I can operate off of, 2 hours delay, hour delay, and it, really doesn't make any material difference. On the ETL side, where I'm actually doing transforms of that data as it's in flight or as it's, kind of sitting in rest at a data warehouse, what we do that's differently is that we act off of every single event. So every time there's a database transaction, somebody calls your API, they interact with your website that makes an API call that talks to a database, we can then transform that data or in real time. So you don't necessarily have to worry about, getting it to a data warehouse and doing your transformations there with like DBT or something. You can like say, hey, I want to, we had a customer that's like, hey, we have GDPR compliance, right? That's a big thing for us to do. And, we want our analysts and our data scientists to work off of GDPR compliant data. So initially, there's a couple ways that you can do that. You can point Fivetran edit, get it all the way down to a Snowflake database, and you run one of these like 1,000 GDPR compliant vendors on the data at rest, and then you build a data mart and you can build a platform API on top of that, right? Or you can stand up like one of these like Flink or Druid clusters or Apache Beam, and essentially you hook it up to your database. You run some jobs in between to slice and dice it, and then all of a sudden you get it down to a data warehouse, right? But that's a lot of infrastructure, right? That's a lot of different things that you have to manage. You have to manage the ingest point. You have to manage your ETL layer like Airflow or all these different things. And then you have to manage it once it gets to your data warehouse. And we're just saying like, well, why, right? Like you can literally write a single line of code or some arbitrary code to interact with every single event at that point as it streams from your system. So we manage all of that for you. And that really is the advantage and secret sauce to Meroxa, because we can control the ingest and we can control the deployment of that data. There's all types of interesting things that we can do in real time in between.
What does change data capture or CDC, what does that mean?
Yeah, it just means that every time there's a transaction in your database, we record it. So we're basically just watching the logs of your database to say, hey, we see an insert, we see an upsert, we see a delete. And we are just tracking those changes in a standardized format, and then using that to replicate your data in wherever place that you want us to replicate your data from.
Could you talk about some of the architectural decisions that enable you to do all of this and be more than this point-to-point solution?
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking of like intermediate stream, processing in stream, like all the things.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the interesting things is that our data plane, which handles all the data movement, all the orchestration, is all open source or will be open source components, right? Like that's not where the magic is, right? Like Kafka's existed forever, Debezium's existed forever. You've had all these different components that have existed. It's kind of like, the example I gave somebody yesterday is like, everybody shops at Whole Foods. Some people choose to make a McDonald's hamburger. Some people choose to make a Michelin 5-star meal. We're the latter versus the former, right? And so we've just chosen the right ingredients to help people achieve an objective, which is, we have a change data capture service that we call Siphon, which is basically based on Debezium. But at the end of the day, like, I could probably talk to a bunch of these attendees here that have tried to run Debezium at scale, and they run into all types of gnarly issues, right? And so we've abstracted that away. So all you have to do is just point your database, or point us to your data source, and we will figure out how to get data out of that in real time. So that's the first part. Like, you don't have to write a upfront schema that says like, hey, this is what a user order event looks like, right? You can actually just point us at the orders table, and then we will stream all of the events that happen in the orders table. So once we get that connection, we actually embed the schema into that stream, right? And as the events happen, now we have the schema embedded, and it goes to our schema registry. And that's where we make some decisions. Like, hey, has the schema changed since the last time that we've seen this the same event? And if yes, is it a safe change or is it an unsafe change? And if it's unsafe, then we basically version your pipeline for you. So you remember the dips in the graph that I was talking about? Like, you never will have those kind of data quality issues again, because we do automatic schema evolution for you, right? So once the schema registry has figured it out, then we dump all of that data into essentially a giant Kafka cluster. It's an event streaming format, and that gives you the ability to have it in a generic format, right? And that allows you to do things like, now I don't have to have the Postgres to Redshift connector or the MySQL to Salesforce connector. I literally have to worry about what are my set of inputs, and then what are my set of outputs that I can hang and multiplex, kind of the stream alongside. And then one of the interesting things that we do in between is that we give you the ability to transform those real-time events. So we have like a lightweight stream processing now, but eventually down the line, we'll have a more robust offering. So now that every event comes in, you can actually apply your own business logic and interact with those events as they happen in real time. I know I'm missing one more thing. Oh, the last thing, and one more thing. We actually include the ability to, it's a proxy layer. So once you have this stream flowing, right, like you transformed it, you got the stream flowing, we actually give you the ability to expose that stream as an API, RESTful API or gRPC. And that's super important, because now I can literally point Meroxa at a database and expose all of those changes as JSON or in protobuf format, right? Like, I guess it gets a little in the weeds, but just imagine like the workflow now, right? Which is, before I would, point things either to a data lake or to a data warehouse. I would run some aggregations with dbt, put that into a format where now a platform engineer has to go and write an API against that. Well, now all I have to do is just say, kind of Meroxa connect, Meroxa add endpoint, and then you're done, right? And like the data's flowing for you. So that's kind of what our architecture is, all together underneath the hood, and it's like all kind of one nice little neat ball of wax. Great.
And you alluded to some of this earlier, but it'd be nice to have it like in just like one spot. What are some of the use cases? So almost like the high level like business use cases. Is that like real time like data warehouse sync? Is that like archival of raw records? What kind of use cases do you have?
Yeah, I mean, for the audience, it's just real easy to say real-time Fivetran. All right, like we can do real-time data warehouse in ingestion, right? We can do real-time data lake ingestion. So if you're doing, kind of any ML or any of that type of stuff, active learning is a thing that people like to do with us, right? Because we can pour those events into to a bucket and kind of allow people to refresh their models that way. We can do basically Meroxa to webhooks. And so just imagine, like, it was funny, our first demo was that, we took this e-commerce store, like just random ass, kind of Rails app that was just like an e-commerce store. And every time a whale or a high value customer made a purchase or complained about something, we would just send it to a Slack message, right? And it's because we can, a Slack channel that's like, oh, high value customer, VIPs, right? Like, we can do that very, very well. And then kind of more of the conceptual things, right? Like data meshing and kind of Kappa architecture, right? So, if you want to have because you can multiplex or, kind of branch out that same stream to multiple destinations, it's real easy for us to have like an immutable S3 bucket for your data lake. And then, we can expose the real-time stream as an API, as well as we can point that directly to a data warehouse for all of your kind of analytics down the line. So like those are the main use cases that people are using us for nowadays.
Great. And who's a good customer for you guys? Is like somebody that like has a Snowflake? Is that like, do you need because a big part of the value proposition seems to be about abstracting away complexity. So is the idea that like you can start using Meroxa even if you don't have much of a data engineering team, like just to solve that problem?
Yeah, absolutely. We look, if you really break down what a data engineer is, at the end of the day, their job is to get data from one place to the next, right? So all you really need to know is three things: where my data's coming from, where my data's going, and what format does it need to be when it gets there, right? Like that seems pretty simple. It's just the tooling that we have in between just obfuscates that and makes it like a really, really shitty job, right? Like at the end of the day, those are the three things that you need. And so for us at Meroxa, you can literally, we go after data engineers and platform engineers, right? Those are the people that we want to be the Lucius Fox to their Batman, right? Like at the end of the day, we're providing them tools to be more productive and to do this kind of unheralded, kind of unsung work, right? Like behind the scenes. And so if you know those three things and you have the credentials, essentially you can use Meroxa out of the box, right? And that's really the audience that we're going after, is that you don't have to rip and replace anything. We are just essentially the experience layer, the puppet master across your data infrastructure, and that's really, we make it easy for you to connect and to kind of deploy your data into a bunch of different places, and that really is, once we lay down that foundation, right, which is, we want to make real-time data as ubiquitous as, turning on a faucet and getting water, flipping a switch and getting electricity. At the end of the day, if real-time data is the default, then what happens, right? Like, I mean, me personally, I just feel like the tools have just really gotten in the way, and it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like, at the end of the day, the open source ecosystem exists, but those people don't necessarily think about like the product experience around how does this technology actually interact with, the goals that people are trying to achieve. And, for us, it's just like, well, what does that experience really look like? And once, real-time data is table stakes and everybody's able to use it at a fashion, then we evolve from just a real-time data platform as a service to now we can be a real-time application ecosystem. Now you can point those very talented engineers that you have that have been doing this plumbing and grunt work for years and have them doing higher order, higher value things. And that's really what our goal is at the end of the day.
Very good, very impressive. So completely switching tacks, just looking at your what you guys have written over the months and your Twitter feed in particular, Meroxa has a very clear focus on building a very diverse team.
Yep.
And I'd love to talk about this a bit in terms of like what you have seen, work and not work, given it's such an obviously important topic in the industry.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the numbers around Meroxa, I think I said right now we're 60% Black and brown, 40% women. Our executive staff is 90% underrepresented. We got one white guy out of 10 people. So, for me, it just starts with intentionality, right? Like, just do it. We if you want to go hire a diverse staff, just go hire diverse staff, right? And like set goals, set metrics. Because like, look, Matt, like we got goals and metrics for every other aspect of our businesses, right? Like if we miss sales, there's an action for that, right? Like, and there's consequences for that. But like, when it comes to like building teams and building culture and like all that type of stuff, people just kind of think of that as an afterthought, right? Like I've been part of these early stage startups where, you're just growing so fast and you're like, wait, shit, now we need to start thinking about culture. And so for us at Meroxa, we just honestly just said, hey, what's the company that we all would want to go work for? And like, we're still evolving and, things like that. But at the end of the day, I just like having diverse perspectives around me. And I like having the best of the best around me. And it just so happens to be that they're diverse. I mean, we got 27 amazing people on staff. I think all but 4 of those people came from my direct network. So, you know, you ask about how to build teams and diverse teams. If at the point you are only thinking about building a team when you start a company, you're already too late. Like, these people are people I've worked with and built relationships with over the course of, 15, 20 years of my career. Right. And so that's the thing where, you always have to kind of put yourself out there, do great work, be a good corporate citizen, always help people, be available and things like that. So when it comes time to do your thing, you have a diverse slate of people to choose from to help you achieve your vision. Right.
Yeah.
Like, you can see all the stats that are out there, like, people that are in the majority or non-minority folks, 80 to 70 to 80% of them don't have a person of color or as a friend, right? Like, just as a friend, right?
Mhm.
And so just think about that when, you're going out and trying to build your teams. Like, you don't need a friend, you just need colleagues and people that believe in you and trust in you. And that's really how I've kind of like patterned my life. And then so when it came to building the company, it was just a foregone conclusion.
Yeah. But for the folks who have not done that, which I think is, unfortunately, a very, very high percentage of folks, and that are sort of starting from behind, what can they do? I mean, is that like any thoughts on like where to source, how to like accelerate efforts?
Yeah.
Any tips you could give?
Yeah, I mean, there are organizations out there. DevColor is one that I'm a part of. Black PMs is another one. DevColor has 1,100 Black engineers of all skill levels. Black PMs is, I think, like 400, 500 product managers that are out there. There's all these affinity groups, women who code, like all that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's just like making yourself available and just introducing yourself and just, saying like, hey, this is the intentionality that I have. This is why it's important to me. And like actually embody and believe that. Because at the end of the day, like if you're just doing it to check a box, people are going to sniff that out. Right. But if you really believe that this is going to help you advance your, whatever it is, objectives that you have, then it's going to come out and people will gravitate towards that. So again, it's just all about intentionality. Start with that. And then like there are established channels for people to go into to engage with at that point. And just don't be afraid to just say, hey, this is what I want. I don't know. And like people are more willing to help you out at that point.
Great. Very interesting. All right. So just to close, let's do a couple of those like rapid fire questions, if you're willing. So some question as Nick, outside of Meroxa, what's a data tool or a project or a company that you love and that you think is just super cool and interesting? It could be established, it could be emerging.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, obviously everybody loves DBT. Like I love Tristan and the team there, but there is a project that I came across with on GitHub, and it is a like observability for basically messaging systems called Plumber. And so now you can inspect, is by Batch Corp. I had to go look it up, but it essentially gives you the ability to introspect streams, and it's super granular, super detailed, and it gives you better information than what you would get natively from Kafka. And it's written in Golang, which is also the great part, because as people know, Kafka is on the JVM, and running the JVM at scale is a pain in the ass. And Golang is much more resource efficient. And so you can do all these cool things from a single binary. So that is the project Plumber.
Okay, very good. And then in 30 seconds, any recommendation of data learning resources, podcasts, newsletters, like anything that you think is cool or interesting that like people should check out?
Yeah, obviously the Meroxa blog, stay up on your latest real-time streaming data. But DB Weekly is another one that I use very much so, just to stay on top of things. And then the DBT blog, right? Like in their newsletter, I stay on top of those things. And if you're in the Slacks, check out the locally optimistic channel. Like there's always a healthy heaping of information to be gleaned from there.
Yep. Those are all fantastic recommendations. All right, wonderful, DeVaris. Thank you so much. This was great. Really enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, best of luck with everything. It's very, very exciting what you do.